Good morning, YouTube. Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Gonna do a quick forecast for Monday because there is a chance for severe weather. And then really, I'm just kind of getting used to doing the morning videos, if I'm being honest. But pretty widespread slight risk area here. For the most part, I wouldn't expect a lot of focused severe weather activity. Maybe a little bit more so towards the western end of this slight risk here, towards the Texas, Oklahoma panhandles, maybe parts of Kansas as well. Maybe south of Kansas or southwestern Kansas, excuse me. Then maybe even towards Denver, we might have to watch out for a little bit of an increased threat of severe weather. Tornado threats also there as well along the panhandles and western end of the slight risk here. This also includes Denver. This is just north of Amarillo, south of Liberal, and in the Texas, Oklahoma panhandles too. You also can't disinclude the northeastern corner of New Mexico. With the wind threat here, we have pretty much a similar deal. I would expect more of the activity to be more so towards the west than over here to the east. I think we have a better than average chance, which is just a little bit above marginal chance for severe weather, and they just made a new refreshment on this page here. Not much looks to have changed though, but Chicago, Peoria, Springfield, St. Louis, Jefferson City, Springfield, Missouri, and also Little Rock, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Wichita, and many other cities. You could see some pulse damaging winds and hail with some of the storms today. Coverage could be widespread, but hail threat, we could get a hatched risk here because parameters do seem like they will be set in place over towards the western end of the slight risk here for some pretty big hail still. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the models here. As far as the wind pattern, the wind setup is concerned, or kinematics as it's called, nothing really standing out here, especially at the higher levels. There's some divergence here, but it's minimal. Like if you actually were to look at the trough here, it's not a very deep trough. It's not digging or anything like that. It's just kind of a little bit more zonal, if you will. So nothing to really be too concerned with here at this point. So this is going to probably keep the tornado threat at bay for the most part. Not to say that they can't happen, but over towards this area here, not a lot to really work with. Go to the 500 to 800 millibars. It's nothing really impressive. The 500s is probably the most impressive look as far as anything kinematically speaking, but it's not set to where I would say, okay, this is definitely screaming a tornado threat. I mean, you see a little bit of activity here. If you were to click this though, not too much is really expected of it. See, more so severe threat. When you actually look at the low levels here, we're struggling to reach 10 knots. It's towards, like I said, the mid levels to mid to upper levels where the wind profile is a little bit more notable, to say the least. It's not even robust by any stretch. As far as instability is concerned with the sounding, it's sufficient enough for severe weather. We're over 2,300 joules per kilogram in Cape. And then also the downward Cape is pretty good, more than sufficient enough for damaging winds at 1386, threshold to 1,000. But what I'm taking note of here is the lapse rates. We're getting into those 7.5s and beyond here. Once you get into the 8s, it's the magical threshold for maybe seeing some larger hail. And these sounding analogs are definitely an indicator as such. Also, hence why we have the probable hazard type severe here. But this is a rough estimate of what we have potential for over here. And like I said, this is mainly over towards the Texas. I guess you would call this maybe the quad state line here, because like I said, New Mexico, Colorado, Texas, Oklahoma, maybe even, what would you call a, no, I think this would be, wait, I have to do math here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I guess that would be a 5-state point right here. I don't know. What would you even call that, I wonder? But anyway, starting to drift off here. So keep it moving, and then probably later in the evening, the threat will start to diminish. May even go live just to do a hail stream, just because. If so, if you want to join in, feel free. Obviously never required, but hey, if you want to just lounge, then we'll see what happens. That all depends on how the work day goes today, though. If it doesn't work, blame my boss, or the person who believes himself to be my boss, I should say. Anyway, though, like I said, mid levels to low levels, nothing really standing out here at all. And then, of course, looking at the low level jet, pretty similar deal. Nothing standing out. Pretty much throughout the afternoon into the evening. There's a small pocket that develops here, but I think that's going to kick in maybe too little too late. Marginal tornado threat by that, but like I said, even then, we're still struggling. Damaging wind definitely seems like the more notable threat here, and maybe some hail as well. But even then, by that point, some of the lapse rates will start to drop off too. So, overall look at the dew points. This is also going to probably coincide with the humidity. And for the eastern half of the country in particular, we're not getting a break. That Gulf of Mexico moisture is not going anywhere. Another thing that kind of throws this severe weather threat into doubt here is that there's not a great moisture return here. We do get some areas where we get into that 60-degree threshold there, but the greatest advance seems to be, again, right towards that five-way point here between these states. We do get up into those 60s, but again, timing is going to be key. If the moisture were to come in a little bit sooner, maybe we'd see a little bit more activity. But even so, we still have enough parameters for severe weather here. Can't discount these other areas here that are in the slight risk, but I think the greatest area of concern would be more so here than anywhere else. Go ahead and take a look at the temperatures. It's summertime. I mean, we all know what to expect here really at this point. Just within the morning hours, a lot of us are still in the 70s here. Very few areas in the U.S. right now are in the 60s. Some spots in the Northeast, and then towards the Northern Plains and towards the Rockies, of course, we have some 60s there. But as we get into the afternoon, we already know what's coming. A lot of 80s, 90s, triple digits across the board for just about everybody, unless you're over towards the mountains. But even then, if you're in the valleys, you're still going to be dealing with plenty of heat. Interesting thing to note here towards West Nebraska here, it's actually in the 50s and 60s. I'm sure some of us wouldn't mind trading, then others wouldn't mind the heat. I'm kind of in the middle with that. I don't know if I want to be in the 50s right now, but I definitely don't want to be in 90 right now because I have to work in it. But nonetheless, though, pretty hot day across the board for all of us. Nothing new there. And then lastly, let's go ahead and take a peek at some of the severe parameters. So this is heading into the mid to late afternoon hours. This is where the most instability exists. It's pretty much along this pocket, just as we were talking about earlier. Anywhere else where there's a slight risk, it's a pretty marginal cape. It's enough to maybe produce a couple of severe storms, but it's few and far in between, honestly. Really, like I said, it's this area right here, and I have the sounding popped up when I didn't need it to. I don't know how it happened, but nonetheless, like I said, this is the area of interest right here when it comes to severe weather, I think. Tornado threat will be more so here where I'm trying to draw this X at. I think this right around here is where that flash point would be. But as a whole here, I gotta click that back. But as a whole, not a lot to work with here. We could see an increase in severe weather after sunset over here, or just at sunset. Low level jet could time this here. We could get a couple of bigger storms to pop up here, and we'll go ahead and take a look at the sounding here. Oh, so this doesn't want to go with a Taurus sounding here, but I think there's actually enough here to go with that. The low level shear looks good. Of course, like I said before, kinematically not too impressive, but lapse rates are good, instability is good. There is a little bit of a cap that tries to form here, but I think if any sort of low-level jet comes in with this, we could see this erode a little bit more. It's not like the inhibition is high, so it's not going to be a strong cap. Downward cape is high, and then of course also the hail threat potential is high because of the lapse rates. There are a couple fail parameters to that, so, or there's actually more fail parameters to that than there are severe outcomes. But nonetheless here, let's go ahead and actually take a look at those lapse rates so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. Brighter the colors pretty much means the higher the lapse rates, or steeper the lapse rates. And we're getting into widespread 7s and 8s here across that particular area of interest, especially as we get later into the evening here. So, like I said, I'm thinking about doing a live stream for hail, mainly. Could see a couple of tornadoes, but I'm not really I wouldn't really hold my breath for that, so to speak. If it happens, then hey. If it doesn't, no big deal. That being said, let's go ahead and finally close this out with reflectivity on 2 types of maps here. We'll start out with the updraft felicity here. This is going to show potential for probably the most severe weather. Like I said, not a whole lot to go with here. A lot of these storms seem like they go severe over towards the eastern half of that slight risk earlier in the day anyway, so I wouldn't be able to capture much. But over here towards O1Z is where I would expect business to pick up around this region here. And then after that, we'll have to see what happens, because this only goes up to about 18 hours based off this most recent run. Could go back a little further to try to see if I could go out a little bit further, but at the same time, information gets outdated after a couple hours, so it's a tricky game to play. Nonetheless, though, let's look at the precip for everybody now. And I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. We're just getting a look at the surface a little bit more. Here's our low pressure, our troublemaker for the severe weather. Here's our high pressure that's keeping storms around the southeast. Actually, it's crazy to say that, but that clockwise flow is bringing moisture back into the southeast. This is what's allowing for us to get showers and thunderstorms to emerge here. And then on top of that, this isn't a really strong high pressure. But on the back side of it here, or the south side of it, you can get more stable conditions. High pressure up north is going to remain dominant, and this is what's going to slow down thunderstorm development towards the Dakotas and maybe towards northern Nebraska. Could keep it a tiny bit on the cold side here on the southwestern flank of it. Interesting to see what we have going on there, but there also is a tiny little trough that develops here, like we talked about earlier, that brings that into play as well. But as a whole here, pretty much your standard summertime weather here, other than the chance of severe over here towards the southwestern plains here. But anyway, that's the end of this video here. If you liked what I did here, you know what to do. Smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and make sure you get that bell on so you get notified to every video. Like I said, I think I'm going to try to go live. I've missed the last couple. I kind of did need to rest though too. Later down the line, it does look like it's going to be more active, and we'll talk about that more in a video a little bit later this week. But anyways, also share the video, and if you have any questions, of course, I'll try to answer them as quickly as I can. But anyway, this has been Metalhead Weatherman. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Till then, take care and have a nice day.